The crisis over the filming of the two Hobbit movies. We speak to the co-writers and co-producers, the Academy Award winners, Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens. Fran Walsh and her husband, Sir Peter Jackson, confirmed late last night in a statement that Warner Brothers has begun making arrangements to move the film out of New Zealand. And they have accused the Actors' Equity Union, which has been locked in an industrial dispute with the movie makers, of shredding the reputation of our burgeoning film industry and attempting to bully them into illegal collective bargaining. Well, are the $500 million films really now leaving our shores? In the same statement, they say they will continue to fight. Warner's apparently is heading here next week. Joining us now with the latest are Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens. Good morning to both of you, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Good morning.
What happened last night that caused Sir Peter Jackson and you to release this statement in the early hours of the morning, Fran?
Well, we wanted to be clear to everyone, to New Zealanders, what the situation is. And we do feel that a degree of misinformation has come out via, unfortunately, Helen Kelly and the CTU about, what's been going on. So we felt that it was better to write it down, make it clear, and so that people understand why this has happened.
All right, so yesterday's developments, we saw Sir Richard Taylor and others involved with the movie go out in March. We know that an Actors' Equity meeting was cancelled last night, and now it's emerging. The actors are saying that on Sunday they agreed to lift the boycott. Is all this part of what caused you to issue that statement last night?
Well, let's be clear, the boycott has not been lifted. And this is one of the reasons why we wrote that statement, because it has not been lifted. And Helen Kelly, no matter how much she, says it, it's not true. If anybody goes to the Screen Actors Guild website, if they look up under Hot News, they will see that we are blacklisted. So that's just frankly, again, more misinformation. And I don't want to get upset, but, this is part of the problem is that, we have been told every day for a month that this blacklist is coming off. Every day we have waited for news of it to be lifted. It has not been lifted. They're toying with us, and now we are beyond caring whether they do this, because the damage is done, and the studio are making their own moves with the film now, and it's rapidly out of our hands.
Tell us what the studios are telling you. Tell us what Warner's is saying to you about where this film is now to be made.
What's the situation that we're facing over this whole issue is that when you're they're very respectful and they understand that we want to make the movies here, but it is a process, and at some stage during that process, you literally feel the thing slipping away, because you begin to understand that this is falling into the too hard basket and the too dangerous basket for the studio, because despite what Helen Kelly and the NZ Equity and Simon Whitt behind the scenes are saying, they haven't shown any good faith. They haven't made any sort of moves to show that this is not a country where if they come down and invest $500 million US of their money, that they're not going to be facing continual ongoing industrial action from New Zealand actors and international actors, because that's what's happened here. I heard Robin speaking on the radio.
Robin Malcolm of Actors' Equity.
Yeah, and she they don't understand. They're saying, how can it be a small group of New Zealand actors who caused this? Well, I'm sorry, Robin, that's not what you did. You invoked SAG, the Screen Actors Guild of America. You invoked British Equity. You invoked not just the New Zealand actors, but you invoked all the actors around the world. This film's reputation was besmirched, and I'm afraid that there's no other way to say it. We were getting calls from people saying, what are you doing to actors? What are you, you're mistreating them. We're not mistreating actors.
Philippa, what are Warner's saying? Because you told us last time we talked, and it was about 2 weeks ago, that it was getting towards crunch conversations between Sir Peter in particular and Warner's. What are they saying to you? You've said in the statement that they're now coming down to New Zealand to move the film offshore. Is that what they've said? It's now going.
They're saying they need stability and certainty, neither of which are here.
So, Fran, are they coming down to check us out?
The film industry used to have that. It used to be a place where people would look to New Zealand and think, I can set a film up there, we can make a film there. Now they do not think that. That's how much we've fallen in the eyes of the rest of the world in terms of studio and overseas investment. And it's an absolute tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy. And that's why Warners are saying we can protect our investment better in another country where we know this isn't going to happen. Because New Zealand's been branded now as an unsafe place to shoot.
Fran, tell me exactly the status of where they're at. If they're sending a representative down here next week, it's to do what?
They've had people in the UK taking photos, taking location photos, looking at. They've got a huge studio there that Harry Potter have vacated that they own. The ex-Rolls-Royce factory that they say would be perfect for us. They have, obviously there are tax breaks over there, but that has nothing to do with, in spite of, again, what Helen Kelly says, that has nothing to do with where the film will end up. It is not a tax break related situation at all. And even though New Zealand can't offer anything like the more attractive ones overseas, that is not the deciding factor in this. What is certainty and stability in the workforce.
Here's what I find interesting about that whole situation, and Helen coming out and being incredibly vocal over this whole situation, is that she's prepared to come out and accuse people like Peter Jackson and Richard Taylor, who've only ever worked in the best interests of their crew and the New Zealand film industry. Now, she feels it's okay for her to come out in defence of an Australian union that brought this on the New Zealand industry, and not in defence of New Zealand workers. And I find that bizarre.
Help me clarify exactly where things are at with Warners. I think everyone's got a sense of the boundaries being pushed here and where things are at. I'm trying to work out where they're at. If they're sending a rep down next week to New Zealand, it is to do what? To assure themselves or to make a final call on whether or not they can trust our industrial situation. Is that what's happening next week?
Well, unfortunately, it feels awfully like to us, because we're sitting here facing this situation, that this conversation is almost already done. I mean, we don't know how far we need to go to try and retrieve this situation, but that's the situation we're in now, that we need to fight to get this film back. That's basically where we're at.
So they haven't said...
Think about it, Catherine, why would you bring a $500 million investment to a place where I mean, this has happened now. We're not even in production. This actually happened before we were even greenlit. So why on earth would a studio who's responsible to a board and has to account for the decisions they make, why would they bring it into a place where it's almost guaranteed industrial action will happen during the shoot? I mean, that's the last thing they can afford to happen, and yet there is no protection for the film that it won't happen. So how can they possibly bring the films here to make them?
And they keep demanding good faith negotiations and good faith discussions, and yet they show absolutely no good faith towards the studio who were actually offering actors incredibly good terms and conditions. And again, why would you wonder at Warner's not wanting to come down here? Why is that a mystery?
So when the statement says Warners are coming down to make arrangements to move the production offshore, it's not quite at that point, I suspect, reading between the lines. I can hear what you're saying. You're trying to convince them, no, it's going to be all right. Are they coming down?
You're asking us to speak for Warners, which I think is a bit unfair. I mean, you should just talk to them yourself.